Have you ever wondered why the old Disney spin-off shows from the 90s felt so much bigger than they were? It was not just the heroes, it was the villains, the schemers, the tricksters, the charming troublemakers who stole the spotlight every chance they got. Some were funny, some were frightening, some were both in the best way, and a few, well, they left marks you do not forget easily. Let's see which ones made this list. Number 12. Moray, The Little Mermaid, the animated series, 1992. Moray is one of those villains who appears out of nowhere and suddenly feels like he has always belonged in the world. The Little Mermaid series from 1992 had its fair share of colorful troublemakers, but Moray stood out because he combined charm and chaos in a way that made him strangely fascinating to watch. We first meet him as a mysterious sea wanderer who seems friendly enough, right up until he starts getting a little too close to Ariel and her curiosity. The series never gives him a full backstory, which somehow makes him feel even more unpredictable. What we do see is a smooth talker who knows how to twist a situation just enough to stir trouble. One of his most memorable moments comes when he tries to influence Ariel by promising her exciting adventures far beyond Atlantica, using her love of discovery against her. The way he shifts from polite guest to sly manipulator feels surprisingly subtle for a 90s cartoon. You can tell the writers wanted him to be a contrast to the louder villains of the show. Moray's danger comes from the way he understands what others want and nudges them in the wrong direction. He never reaches the scale of someone like Ursula, but he earns his place here because of how quietly effective he is. He is the kind of villain who slips into a story, stirs the water, and leaves you wondering why he ever seemed harmless in the first place. Number 11. Madame Macobra, Timon and Pumbaa, 1995. If you watched Timon and Pumbaa in the mid-90s, then you know the show had some delightfully wild villains. But Madame Macobra is on a whole different level. She is a smooth, sneaky figure, introduced with the grace of a stage performer, and the slyness of someone who always has another secret hidden behind her smile. Her first appearance is in the episode where she arrives in the desert looking like an elegant traveler, only for us to discover that she is much more dangerous and far more clever than Timon assumes. What makes her memorable is the way she blends charm with confidence. She knows she has power, and she uses it with such style that it is almost fun to watch her deceive others. The scene where she convinces Timon to trust her, only to pull her plan in an instant, feels like a classic 90s villain moment. The animation exaggerates her expressions just enough to make her presence larger than life, without ever making her silly. Even more impressive is how she mirrors Timon's personality. She speaks fast, she thinks faster, and she has a soft, smooth way of delivering lines that makes even her smallest actions feel important. Madame Macobra is not the loudest villain on this list, but she is absolutely one of the smartest. She earns her place because she brings a level of slick, slithering style that fits perfectly into the retro Disney era. In a show filled with chaos and jokes, she is the rare villain who feels genuinely in control. Number 10. Cruella de Vil, 101 Dalmatians, the series, 1997. Cruella in the 1997 series is a fascinating case study in how you soften a classic movie villain just enough for weekend television while still keeping her fun. The original movie version from 1961 is one of Disney's most iconic antagonists, known for her wild energy and over-the-top personality. But the series gives us a different angle. This Cruella is more polished, more calculating, and definitely more focused on outsmarting rather than shocking. Her updated look includes a sleek black and white suit and fewer dramatic gestures, but her presence remains unmistakable. She still sweeps into scenes like she owns the entire town, even when she clearly does not. The series leans into her obsession with wealth and property, turning her into the kind of villain who will build an entire amusement park just to hide her real plan. And honestly, that only makes her more entertaining. One of the standout episodes features her designing a huge theme park to disguise a not-so-friendly scheme underneath. The way she tries to use flashy rides and fake smiles to cover her actions feels like a retro cartoon version of corporate mischief. The writers know exactly what they are doing. They turn every exaggerated idea into something fun. This version of Cruella might not be as intense as the original, but she still carries enough attitude and ambition to deserve a spot on this list. Even trimmed down for television, she remains a force of personality, impossible to ignore and impossible to forget. Number 9, The Phantom Blot, House of Mouse, 2001. Some villains rely on style, others rely on noise, but the Phantom Blot? He relies on silence, shadows, and a presence that feels colder than the room he walks into. When House of Mouse arrived in the early 2000s, it brought countless characters together, but very few villains made an entrance as striking as the Blot. He slips into stories like a living shadow, never raising his voice, never losing his calm, and somehow becoming the most intimidating figure in the room. Unlike many animated villains who lean into comedy, the Phantom Blot plays it straight. His tall, dark design makes him stand out instantly. He moves with patience and precision, creating an air of mystery that the show does not fully explain. And honestly, that is what makes him great. He feels like a leftover from an older, more dramatic era of Disney, placed inside a lighter show where he becomes even more unsettling. In one of his most memorable appearances, he tries to take over the entire club using tricks, traps, and clever planning. The contrast between the cheerful setting and his quiet determination gives the episode a unique tension. Mickey, who usually deals with playful troublemakers, suddenly faces someone who is calm, focused, and far more serious than the usual crowd. The Phantom Blot earns his place on this list because he represents a different kind of villain, one who does not shout, joke, or boast. He simply appears, takes command of the moment, and leaves a mark that stays with you long after the screen fades to black. Number 8, Queen La, The Legend of Tarzan, 2001. Few Disney television villains had the dramatic flair of Queen La from the Legend of Tarzan series. She enters the story as the ruler of the ancient city of Opar, and everything about her feels larger than life. Her voice, her presence, her ambition. The moment she appears, you know something intense is coming. She is not loud or comedic. She is calm, controlled, and confident in a way that makes every scene revolve around her. Her first big story begins with a ritual involving Jane's father, setting up a mystery that slowly spirals into one of the show's most memorable episodes. La's obsession with Tarzan adds another layer, creating tension that carries through every scene she shares with him. She wants power, she wants her city restored, and she will bend anyone and anything around her to achieve it. And the animation team goes all in on her dramatic gestures, from her sweeping movements to the glowing staff she relies on. Her later appearance involving Jane and an injured creature brings an even darker twist. Queen La returns in a surprising way, using subtle control rather than direct confrontation. This storyline allows her character to expand beyond the typical one-note villain. She becomes someone who is equal parts commanding and mysterious. Queen La earns her place high on this list because she brings a sense of danger that feels almost mythical. She is elegant, determined, and unforgettable, proving that even a limited number of episodes can produce a villain who lingers in your memory long after the story ends. Number 7. Dawn Carnage, Tailspin, 1990. There are villains who threaten cities, and then there are villains who threaten every inch of the sky just by showing up. Dawn Carnage from Tailspin is the second type. He is the fearless, dramatic, endlessly quotable leader of the air pirates, and every time he swoops into a scene, the show instantly becomes 10 times louder and 100 times more fun. He talks like he is performing for a crowd, even when no one is around. And honestly, that is part of his charm. Carnage is introduced as the kind of pirate who wants everything, from treasure to control to attention. He pilots his own ship with confidence, ordering his crew around with a mix of comedy and flair. But under all the comedy is someone who is genuinely smart. He studies his enemies, plans ahead, and sometimes comes surprisingly close to victory. His attempts to capture Baloo's plane or steal precious cargo always feel bigger than the cartoon world can handle. What makes Carnage unforgettable is his personality. He speaks in wild phrases that sound half genius and half nonsense. He reacts with huge gestures. He loves dramatic pauses. Even when he loses, he does it with flair. And that is why he stands out. Many villains try to be scary. Don Carnegie tries to be unforgettable. Kids from the early 90s still remember his voice, his red coat, and his constant need for attention. In a world full of serious villains, Carnage is proof that confidence and comedy can be just as powerful. Number 6. Negaduck, Darkwing Duck, 1991. Darkwing Duck had no shortage of villains, but none of them matched the energy of Negaduck. He is Darkwing's opposite in every way. Darkwing wants attention, sure, but he also tries to do the right thing. Negaduck? He wants attention and control, and he will make sure you know he enjoys every moment of chaos he creates. From the second he appears in his bright yellow and red outfit, the animation lets you know things are about to go sideways. He comes from the Negaverse, a twisted version of Darkwing's world, and that alone makes him instantly interesting. Negaduck isn't just a villain, he is a shadow reflection of the hero, with all the confidence but none of the kindness. His personality is loud, explosive, and always ready to take control. Every gesture he makes is bigger than the last. He has a way of turning even simple tasks into dramatic performances. One of his best traits is how quickly he takes over any scene. If he is introduced in a quiet moment, that moment does not stay quiet for long. The writers clearly loved using him because he let them push the show's comedy and tension at the same time. And the voice acting brings him to life with a rich mix of humor and force that kids never forgot. Negaduck earns this spot because he is one of the few Disney television villains who genuinely feels dangerous and hilarious at the same time. He is unpredictable, expressive, and exactly the kind of character who leaves a mark long after the episode ends. Number 5. Mosenrath, Aladdin, the animated series, 1994. Aladdin's animated series from the mid-90s has many villains, but Mosenrath is the one who felt like he came straight out of a darker, grander story. From the moment he enters the screen in his black and blue outfit, he has the presence of someone who is always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. He rules the land of the black sand, which already sounds mysterious, and his calm confidence makes him the perfect match for Aladdin's bold personality. Mosenrath works with logic, magic, and a calm attitude that makes his scenes even more intense. He never needs to raise his voice to show how powerful he is. Instead, he uses clever plans, traps, and mind games that make the heroes scramble to keep up. His magic is not loud or flashy. It is quiet and precise, giving him an edge that most television villains never get. One thing that always stood out about Mosenrath is the way he treats his companion, Xerxes. Their dynamic adds a subtle comedy to his serious personality. He speaks to Xerxes the way a strict teacher speaks to a student who constantly misunderstands simple instructions. It is a running joke that somehow makes Mosenrath even more fun to watch. Fans still talk about him because he felt like a movie villain placed into a weekly cartoon. He brought maturity, mystery, and ambition to the show. And even though he never became the main villain of the Aladdin universe, he became one of the most memorable figures from the series. Number 4. Dr. Hemsterville, Lilo and Stitch, the series, 2003. Some villains tower over the world. Dr. Hemsterville does not. He is tiny, fluffy, and looks like he should be harmless. But do not let that fool you. In Lilo and Stitch, the series released in 2003, Hemsterville quickly proves that size has nothing to do with ambition. He might be small, but his plans are some of the biggest in the entire show. And the way he delivers every line with sharp, impatient energy makes him unforgettable. Hemsterville begins as the mastermind behind the illegal experiments created by Yumba. When he appears, he brings a wave of chaos to the islands. He wants control, he wants the experiments back, and he wants everyone to know that he is smarter than them. The show leans into his dramatic personality. His gestures are huge. His reactions are explosive. And every time something goes wrong, he blames Jumba with a passion that becomes its own running joke. One of his most entertaining plots involves him trying to gather every escaped experiment at once. He sends Gantu after them again and again, and each time the results fall apart in the funniest way possible. But Hemsterville never loses confidence. He always believes he is one step away from victory, even when the universe seems determined to prove him wrong. He earns this spot because he brings both comedy and intensity to the series. He is loud, dramatic, overconfident, and constantly frustrated, creating a villain who is as fun to watch as he is unpredictable. In a show filled with strange experiments and wild adventures, Dr. Hemsterville somehow manages to stand out every single time. Number 3. Warp Dark Matter. Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, 2000. Some villains are dangerous because of their strength, others because of their skills. Warp Dark Matter is dangerous because of his history. He is Buzz Lightyear's former partner, best friend, and someone who should have been a hero. Instead, he became one of the most surprising betrayals in any Disney spin-off. Buzz trusts him completely until one mission changes everything. Warp disappears in a dramatic collapse, and Buzz blames himself for not saving him in time. But that moment is only the beginning. When Warp returns, he does not come back as a hero. He reveals that he had been working for Zurg the entire time, switching sides long before that mission. This twist hits hard because it reshapes Buzz's entire past. Warp becomes Agent Z, hiding behind a mask, hiding behind secrets, and using every trick he learned as a space ranger to fight against the people he once protected. His design is sharp, his voice has weight, and his metal arm makes him instantly recognizable. The series uses him to push Buzz into more emotional territory than most spin-offs ever attempt. And the best part? Warp is not simply evil for the sake of being evil. He enjoys his new role with a grin and a smooth confidence that makes him incredibly entertaining to watch. Warp Dark Matter earns this spot because he blends personal stakes with real character depth. He is bold, calculating, and unforgettable. One of those villains who proves that the strongest stories come from the number 2. Shere Khan, Tailspin, in 1990. Some villains roar their way into a story. Shere Khan does not need to. In Tailspin, released in 1990, he walks into the room with quiet confidence, and everyone else immediately adjusts. This version of Shere Khan is not the jungle hunter from the original movie. He is a towering business leader dressed in a perfect suit, speaking in a calm voice that somehow feels more dangerous than any growl. When he looks at someone, the room seems to tighten. What makes him stand out is the way he controls situations without ever raising his tone. While other villains in the series rush into dramatic plans, Shere Khan simply makes a phone call, signs a paper, or gives a quiet order, and the world shifts in his favor. His icy patience turns him into a different kind of threat. He does not need to chase anyone. He just waits, watches, and moves at the exact moment that benefits him. One of his most memorable moments is when he warns Baloo about staying out of company matters. He does not use force. He uses presence, and somehow that is even more powerful. His influence reaches every corner of Cape Suzette, making him feel less like a villain of the week and more like a force that has been shaping the world long before the episodes began. Shere Khan earns this spot because he proves that you do not need noise to be memorable. You just need confidence, strategy, and a voice that cuts deeper than any action scene ever could. Number 1. Hades, Hercules, the animated series, 1998. Here we are, the top spot. And honestly, who else could it be? Hades from the Hercules animated series remains one of the most iconic and perfectly handled villains in any Disney spin-off. The movie already made him a fan favorite, but the series took that spark and stretched it across an entire world of stories. Thanks to a version of the timeline that plays by its own rules, Hades gets to be the main villain episode after episode, and he delivers every time. With his blue flames, sharp timing, and unstoppable sarcasm, Hades turns even simple scenes into highlights. He insults heroes, jokes with sidekicks, complains about his job, and still manages to run the underworld with confidence. He works with Pain and Panic, who add an endless supply of chaos to his plans. And even when those plans backfire, Hades never loses his rhythm. He just rolls his eyes, snaps his fingers, and gets ready for the next big idea. One of the reasons he earns number one is how consistent he is. Some villains change tone from one episode to another, but Hades stays perfectly balanced. He is funny without being harmless, he is charming without being soft, and he is dramatic without losing control. That balance makes him feel like a real character, not just a cartoon villain. For many fans, Hades is the reason the Hercules series is still remembered today. A villain who steals the spotlight is rare. A villain who does it for more than 60 episodes? That is legendary. So there you have it, 12 villains who proved that Disney's spin-off era was far more daring, clever, and creative than most people remember. Each one brought something unique to the screen, whether it was style, mystery, humor, or pure presence. Now it's your turn. Which villain shaped your childhood? Which one deserves a higher spot? Drop your thoughts below, share this with another fan, and keep exploring those forgotten corners of classic animation.